Hi there, folks. This is a very quick navigation guide for our course, Contemporary Fantasy. So I am in student mode, so what you see in this video should be what you see when you are on screen. The first thing I just want to draw your attention to is at the very top of the page where it says recent announcements. As of the recording of this video, I haven't written any announcements, but every week I post a new announcement on Tuesday morning, and you will see the two most recent announcements right up here between this recent announcements heading and this heading for our course. So I encourage you every week to take a look at that announcement. It's just going to remind you of what's going on that week. If there's any slight tweaks to the week, anything really important that you need to know and or remember. Over here, you'll see all the things that you can use and navigate to in our course. I'm not going to click on it, but the syllabus will obviously show you all of the documentation about our course policies, our course schedule, our course grading, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then also, of course, you can click on grades and you will find your scores and my comments on all of your work. You can also, the way that you will get into Perusall, which is a tool that we will use when we get to workshopping, will be accessed right here. There's an entire module that will go through some stuff about that, which we'll get to in just a second. If you want a quick access to any of our discussion boards, you can also find those right here. I'm going to come back to that shortly. But the primary way you're going to navigate our course is this modules button. So if I click on this is going to take us into all of our course modules. As with many of our MFA courses, our class is broken down into 8 weekly modules, but there are also a couple of other things that I will just draw your attention to. This first page is basically our syllabus broken down into its various constituent parts. You can see the whole syllabus here, but you can also click on any of these things if you have questions about various bits of information. This second module is just general MFA information. You've probably been given much of this information at some point during the program, but if you ever have questions about basic things like the various emphases, the degree requirements, how to register, you can also find those helpfully within our course. There's also some information about flex courses, the thesis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the MFA Students Canvas course, and those kinds of things. This third module is also not one of our weekly modules, but is relevant to our course. It is everything that you're going to need to know about completing workshops in our course, including what it is that you'll be able to submit for workshop, how you will give and receive feedback, and also an entire page devoted to understanding how we are going to use this tool Perusall, if that is something that you've never used before. You don't need to look at that as we get started, since we're not going to be workshopping until the final quarter of our course. But if you want to get a heads up about what that's all going to look like, you can take a peek there. Then we come to our weekly units. So this is where you're going to be spending most of your time in our course. As you can see, each unit lasts 1 week. In this course, with the exception of the first week, just as an FYI, in case you haven't caught it on some other page, I actually have our weeks begin on Tuesday and end on Monday. The exceptions, of course, are week 1, which begins on a Monday, but also ends on a Monday, and week 8, which begins on a Monday and ends on a Sunday, because that's when the course ends. But otherwise, we'll be actually moving Tuesday through Monday just to give you a little bit of extra time on the back end to complete some of our work. All documents and requirements are in sequence, so you should be able to click through pages in order to find the things that you need. What I will always recommend is that you start on the weekly overview. As of this recording, this one doesn't have this yet, but there will be an overview video for the week at the top of this page that I strongly recommend you take a look at, because it will remind you of everything that you'll need to do in a given week. At the bottom of the page, you'll also find all of our assignments listed out in order, so you'll know exactly what needs to be done by when. The time that things are due is always 11:59 p.m. Central, but if you live in a different time zone, Canvas should automatically adjust those things for you, okay? I want to bring one thing to your attention about some of our discussion boards. Especially, discussion boards often have multiple deadlines, and Canvas has recently changed helpfully so that you being the instructor can assign multiple deadlines to discussion boards. So you can see that this first discussion board we're going to have in week 1 has your initial reply due by January 15th, 2026, and required replies to other students by January 19th. I would like to, though, if you look at week 2, you'll notice that the week 2 discussion does not have those distinguished different deadlines. The reason for that is many of our reading discussion boards have 3 deadlines. You'll see that in the instructions for those, and the problem is Canvas does allow one set of reply deadlines, but not two. So you will actually need to know that you need to come back and do 3 sets of responses in those discussion boards, because Canvas is not going to remind you of that. I, however, will in both announcements and in my video overviews, and also instructions will indicate that. Okay? So just make sure that when you are looking at discussion boards, you're just reading those deadlines carefully. Those are the basics of how we're going to move through our course. I think each week is pretty clear in terms of its trajectory, in terms of its requirements. And so that is all you should need to know for being able to move through and find particular things in our class. But if you ever have questions, you shouldn't hesitate to ask. The way that you'll do that is I have a discussion board here that is pinned to the top of the page and is also available at the bottom of every single module, called Questions for the Instructor. I check this daily. So if you have a general question about finding something in our course, how something in our class works, this is the best place to ask it. And also, if you have these questions, you might check here to see